Welcome, Internet, to the PixelPlay Podcast, your weekly gaming podcast where we get together to discuss everything involving video games. I am one of your co-hosts, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by my co-host, Adam, CS Radical, and Chris at Jin and Chris. This week we have one question and one question only. What was the first AAA game? We're going to be talking about what is a AAA game and trying to see if we can figure out which game would be considered the first AAA game. We also have untimely reviews for the Dead Space remake and a untimely review for Final Fantasy XII. If you like that and you want more, we post podcasts wherever you get your podcast every Wednesday at 12 p.m. Eastern Standard Time or on YouTube at PixelPlay Podcast. With that being said, gentlemen, how are we doing this week?
Well, now I'm relieved I didn't suggest me doing an untimely review because mine would have been from games from 1994, 1990, and 1987, the Phantasy Star series.
We talked about Phantasy Star last week. It counts.
We did. Imagine I did a full-on review and I'm like, oh, spoilers, by the way, from a game from 1987.
Look, I'll go out of my way to play Pong and review Pong. I am not against this.
Yeah, because I decided this year it's the JRPG year. I don't know why I decided that's what it's going to be. I think it's because of Unchained Echoes? Yeah.
Chained Echoes.
Chained Echoes. I don't know. I'm thinking Unchained. Untimely? That's probably why. Yeah, Chained Echoes, I think, got me on this like hype train of JRPGs and Legend of Dragoon and stuff. I didn't think I would hop into all three Phantasy Star games, like excluding the third one because it's like a spin-off. And I freaking loved playing through those games. I know, Adam, you just played through the fourth one. So if anybody's looking for a good JRPG and you don't mind graphics from Sega Genesis or even the Master System, hop in. If you have a Switch, that's the easiest way to do it because of Phantasy Star 1, Sega Ages collection. That's tough to say. But yeah, I highly suggest all three of them if you don't mind to jump back in graphics, obviously.
There's definitely a beauty to the way that old JRPGs were in that, I mean, obviously JRPGs have always taken a lot of your time, but back then it's actually a much more, it's a better like value in terms of your time where it's not like a lot of games now where they're like 60, 80 hours and it just takes so long. Whereas these games were old for the time, but they're more like 15, 20, maybe 30. So like for the most part, you actually feel like you can finish a game in relatively decent time rather than, painstakingly like spending like 50 hours trying to grind up so you finally get good enough to take on that extra secret final boss that you were trying to get a hold of.
Yeah. I actually beat all three in this month too. So that shows how feasible that is. Because normally if I start a JRPG, I'm like, goodbye life and everyone else. And
if you finally ever get a hold of starting the Trails games, good luck. I'll see you in about a year.
I've got one installed on my Steam Deck. We'll see. But yeah, if you're gonna ever play these games, the only thing I suggest is grab like a new modern collection or one of those Sega Ages, only because Sega is amazing, much like many remasters and stuff all these old JRPGs have. They've added a fast forward button, and it is the biggest game changer because the only gripe I had with those old games, well, I have a few, but the biggest one is like slow walking speed or having to spend 2 hours grinding out levels, just battle over battle. When you hold down that fast forward button and you go from 60 frames a second to like 300, and it's just like this battle, this battle, you get through those real fast. Or the dungeons.
They have like the macros too in those games. So you can actually set like specific skills, and if you want to like really go ham on it, or you just straight up have a macro that's just all attack, and you just go, okay, run, go.
Yes.
Oh, they're dead. Yeah. Cool. All right, let's go do that again.
Yep.
Yeah, it's definitely something that I've kind of felt too, where I guess just because we're still in this waiting game of a lot of the bigger stuff to come out. Like obviously we won't know until June when Microsoft does their big showcase, what's coming down the pipeline in the second half of the year. There's rumors that Sony's going to be doing one before E3 goes off, so we'll see if that actually ends up being true. But we're in this kind of like area of not really knowing what the fuck to do now. So JRPGs kind of are, at least for us two, I know, can fill the hole pretty well because that's basically our jam.
Star Wars is coming out in a little more than a month. That's what I'm waiting for.
Oh yeah.
Fallen Order Survivor, or Star Wars Jedi Survivor?
Jedi
Survivor.
Yeah. They just had that story trailer release.
Oh my god, I'm so excited.
Oh yeah, that's gonna be a day. That's gonna be a good day.
Yeah, I have a feeling I'm gonna be sick that week. If my boss is listening, I'm gonna be sick that day. So
Yeah, I mean, at this time, like, I'm at that point of like, okay, I guess coffee talk is the big thing I'm waiting for right now. Because,
Oh yeah.
like, in terms of like major games, like the biggest one I'm waiting for is the next Trails game, but that's not till July. So unless we get another announcement of something, like everything else is in. Okay, if you're like half off or so, I'll eventually get around to you. But on launch, there's nothing I'm like painstakingly after, aside from I guess MLB the Show, which as the resident sports gamer here, I'm waiting for it. But Game Pass is having it, so I don't have to even spend money on that. So I'm free to play in that shit and still playing their Ultimate Team mode in Diamond Dynasty and still not spending $1 on it because that's just how I roll.
I dare you disrespect Sony. You gotta get the trophies, man. It's not MLB if you're not getting trophies.
Yeah, but that cost me $80 for trophies. I'm not doing that.
That's something I'd do.
See, I am holding out in March because there's nothing really, like, we're at the tail end, but we've got Horizon coming out and we've got Star Wars coming out in April, and I am so excited.
There is the expansion for Horizon, so that's like the only thing I'm sort of keeping an eye on.
Aloy goes to Hollywood.
Yeah. Acting career.
Yeah. I'm trying to think if there was anything else big. I mean, we obviously have I think if I remember correctly, that GTA clone was supposed to be coming out soon.
Was it?
I thought I remember seeing that there was a date recently for it.
There was some articles about it. I can't remember if there was a date.
Yeah, Crime Boss I think is still set for the 28th from what I'm reading here on GameSpot.
28th of March?
Yeah.
Well, they might want to start advertising for that.
Yeah, right. I feel like there's zero marketing right now, which
Aside
is confusing.
From that, the trailers that I've seen for Dead Island 2 are interesting, but I'm still not nearly in the thought of buying it unless Game Pass throws it on there.
Mm.
But like, it looks interesting enough. It looks like something fun to play with people, so that'd be something to look at. But like, I keep scrolling because I didn't like Fallen Order, so Survivor doesn't do anything for me. I guess Redfall might be the next interesting one, but I'm still not jazzed for it.
Yeah, I'm not jazzed for that one.
No.
Tears of the Kingdom, I didn't like Breath of the Wild, so that's not on my radar.
Oh, that's
Suicide Squad, is on no one's radar.
Yeah, I'm like in that weird spot right now where, like, because the games are coming out in a month, I've got like nothing to play. Because the rate I finish games, like, I mean, we see my Untitled reviews; they're usually 2-3 month spread apart. So I don't want to start anything heavy, and I don't want to buy anything right now. I'm just waiting for those two. So I'm kind of just right now, like, just going through PlayStation Plus Extra. Whatever.
Yeah, that's basically what it is right now. Like, Extra just put a bunch of new stuff on there, so I'm gonna start looking at that. I know I still gotta mess with Code Vein, even though I know that's gonna kick my ass because it's basically Weeb Dark Souls. So we'll see how long that lasts. But obviously, Chia just came out, which is that new game that they were doing. So I'll take a pop at that.
That does not interest me at all.
It does, honestly. I'm not interested in it really that much either. But I'm kind of in the same vibes I did with, like, say, like a Bug Snacks or what was the last indie game they got put on there?
Stray?
Yeah, Stray. Like, it's always like it's one of their first party studios making a game and it's on there for free. I'll take the crack at it and see what's going on. Who knows? Maybe I'll really like it. I'm trying to think what else I downloaded. I downloaded Untitled Goose Game because of course I did.
Oh, this game's so good.
Maybe that's what I'm gonna play. I'm gonna play that.
Oh, Ghostwire I'm gonna try, even though I'm pretty sure I'm not gonna like it just based on what I saw of it. And there's one more that I'm just blanking off the top of my head on right now, but at least like there's plenty of, and then Game Pass obviously will have stuff coming out soon. Like I said, MLB's coming out on the 28th. There's this other game that's called like Guitar. I can't remember what it was called, but it was like Guitar something.
Yeah,
I can't remember what it's called either.
But it sounded like a 2D RPG that had to do with music. I'm like, okay, you have my attention. Infinite Guitars, that was the name of it. So I'm like, what's that? RPG and guitars? You didn't have to sell me on much on that, and also it's free. Okay, yeah, I'll go for it. So yeah, it's kind of like that weird state that I think we have this happen a lot in the last few years, where it just seems like there's these constant dead periods now. COVID was a big part of it, obviously, before that, but it seems like you'd figure this year would be a little bit bigger, but it may also just be that like nothing has really hit hard yet. Like there hasn't been that like de facto like big game yet this year aside from Hi-Fi Rush, but that's because it came out of nowhere.
Yeah. Let's swap over to this week's topic. I was thinking about AAA gaming, and we like just like I was kind of going through and kind of looking at games to play, and like I said, I'm waiting for Star Wars Survivor, and I was like, oh, like I'm gonna check out some of the games, and it's looking at a lot of the big AAA games, and I was kind of thinking about it, and like, what was the first AAA game? And it seems like an obvious question, but like it also raises like it has a whole bunch of nuance to it, like what was the first game, and also like what is a AAA game? So I thought for this week we'd have this fun little thought exercise where we're gonna kind of figure out what was the first AAA game. In order to do that, we have to work backwards. We have to first define what is a AAA game. So I thought we can kind of go through, figure out what some of the criteria are. Now, obviously, I feel like AAA gaming is a evolving title. Like what was AAA 10 years ago is different from what it is today. So like we're not going to find something that meets all the categories, but maybe if we could find something that fits most of those, that would probably give us an idea. So I ask the panel, I ask the Mind group, what to you guys defines a AAA game?
To
Adam, you
me,
wanna go
the
first?
biggest thing that'll be the big part of it, honestly, is budget.
Okay.
Or just like the money that was sunk into it.
Mhm.
Because I mean, anybody could just be like, well, technically, like Pong was the first big game that ever came out, so wouldn't it be Pong? Well, that's not necessarily the case because it probably didn't cost like nearly as much money as it did as like a lot of other games would. So to me, I think a big part of it's going to be like straight up just like how much money was pumped into the game to get it going. Because I mean, you could make an argument of games like Mario and them, but they also weren't like heavily advertised. Like we just, you found about them just through like magazines and stuff, but it's not like the craze was nearly as big. It was almost like word of mouth in the early days. There really wasn't like that big marketing machine until much later. So it's going to be an interesting back and forth to kind of figure out like where that actually lies. I think I have like my rough idea of what it's going to be, but we'll see how that goes.
Okay. So first category is budget. We're looking at something with a big budget. Chris, what's something for you that stands out as a definer of big, like a big AAA game?
It's hard to describe because I've got kind of this one idea in my head that I was thinking of earlier today when I started thinking about this question. And it was kind of like, for me, almost AAA games are like, it's like the difference between like an indie movie and like a blockbuster movie. Like there's a big difference in that it's like the size of a studio. So for me, I think for sure, for a AAA game is it can't be something, built from just one person or just a few friends or something in somebody's garage. It does need to come from a studio. Like it actually has to come from a developer that would have had, numerous people working on the game versus like something as a hobby or something kind of on the side. I'd probably say that would be one.
Sure. So I'm going to put in here, like, I'm just making a list. So we got budget. I'm going to put large studio / publisher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean that's
good.
pretty much a guarantee given too, because I mean
Mhm.
it's not like we're sitting here talking about how even though it's a big deal, but like games like Super Meat Boy and stuff is no matter how much money they make, Minecraft even to this day I don't even think you can technically call a AAA game because it started out just being a small thing. Even though it's like the biggest thing possible, it's not really a AAA game either because it wasn't designed to be one.
Yeah. For me, I'm going to go like, I don't know how to put it because I want to put like marketing and like mainstream, but like kind of in the sense of like there's a marketing budget, and this kind of goes into budget, but like there's a marketing campaign that permeates outside of the gaming like ecosystem that we have here. So people are seeing it on like TV, like they're seeing it like during like NFL games, or they're seeing it during like they go to the store and there's promotions on like bags of Doritos or something.
Yeah,
like
like
that.
it's inescapable.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put marketing / public view kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. That's yeah.
Okay. What else do we got?
I mean, I think that's probably the key here because I don't think because it wouldn't be like game sales don't matter. That doesn't determine what makes a game AAA.
Mhm.
It certainly isn't ratings. It certainly isn't like what console it's on. Like that's to me doesn't make a difference. I don't think whether it's 3D or 2D makes a difference. I think we've honestly covered that it's the budget, it's a big studio, and the marketing power behind it. I think that's honestly like the key things. Unless anybody else can think of anything else, I think we've got our like 3 solid concepts.
The only thing I was thinking of, and this might be later day AAA games, I'm gonna put it in just in case it hits the criteria, but I feel like having like recognized names on the project. So whether that is a voice actor like Nolan North or Troy Baker, or whether it is a composer or
I see
like a Miyamoto kind of thing, like having like not, I don't want to put celebrity, but having, or like a Cliff Bleszinski,
But like
kind
some
of
sort of
where-
recognition level.
Yeah,
Yeah, whether
recognize.
it's the developer or somebody in the game.
Like
or-
pedigree,
yeah.
basically.
Yeah, so I'm gonna put like recognized names in production,
Okay.
and yeah, that's kind of one of the things I'm thinking.
It definitely works for what I had, so.
Okay. What is there any other criteria that you guys can think of?
I don't know if this really is one up because you mentioned the word mainstream when you're talking about marketing. And I was
Mhm.
kind of thinking like I wonder if like usually AAA games are meant for the masses. Like they put it out and it's like, hey, everybody in the world, this is this game, play it. Much again like movies where it's like,
Mhm.
hey, new Jurassic Park, everybody should come see this regardless. Like it's not
Mhm.
meant for a niche audience or a niche group for the most part. But I'm wondering if that actually would apply for AAA games because I'm wondering if there is any like AAA but like niche, like small audience kind of situation. Because normally AAA's, Assassin's Creed, it's not meant for just a specific type of person. It's meant for literally
Yeah.
Mhm.
everybody.
So we could maybe like put like something like not niche or something like that.
Yeah. Mainstream.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
something that most people were going to play, especially in that era.
Mm-hmm.
Because too, the things have changed too. Like, not everybody was playing PC first-person shooters back in the day compared to now, where that is literally like one of the de facto things we see. In the same way that, like, obviously puzzle games were a lot bigger, I guess, back in the day when Tetris was huge and you had all the different clones when you have Wario's Woods and Yoshi's Cookie and Dr. Mario and all of them. That was just Nintendo alone there, so that's not even counting all the other versions that came out.
The other thing that I put in there is like technologically impressive, and I'm not going to say necessarily like graphically or anything like that, but
Mhm.
like either it does something that like people like
Yeah,
talk
like something
about,
that
or something.
challenged at the time.
Yeah, like cutting edge technology, whether that is like,
Mhm.
hey, we have a new AI, or we have look at the graphical fidelity of this, or
Like, it was something that you could
Yeah.
almost consider was a game changer in that era for what it pushed.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
that covered. Well, I mean, we already covered everything I had initially, and then you guys added a couple things. I'm like, well, that still doesn't change my answer.
So we have budget, large studio / publisher, marketing and public view, recognized names in production, not niche or not niche / mainstream, and technologically impressive.
Oh, somebody on Reddit will hate it regardless.
Well,
no matter
yeah.
how good or bad.
Of course.
Hated by that Reddit user.
You know who you are.
Damn it, don't steal my joke.
Maybe they're one of us. Dun dun dun.
Yeah, but I'd have to comment on Reddit for that to happen. I'm just a lurker.
I mean, if it was me, my Reddit handle is literally Jen and Chris. So if you ever see that, it kind of might be me.
So with that being said, guys, what are some categories that we have?
What do you mean by categories?
Or sorry, what are some contenders that we have?
Oh, okay. Who wants to start? Who wants to throw the big one into the field?
So I'm gonna make a list, and we can I'm not looking for one. We can throw a couple out there. We can discuss it as we go.
Okay, fine. I'll start. So to me, the de facto AAA game that probably started what I guess would be considered that name, because I mean, we can make an argument for Link to the Past. We can make an argument for like Mario World. We can make an argument for a lot of games back then. I don't think that the usage of AAA really started to become a thing until the 3D era started.
Mhm.
And to me, the game that really pushed what 3D gaming was going to be, that really had the pedigree of a studio that everybody knew was going to be, it was a big deal. Everybody knew it was coming. To me, that is Final Fantasy VII. And I could not see anything before that, honestly. I don't know what there is out there before 1997 with that game that could probably come close to that. Because that game, to my knowledge, too, was like massive budget for its time, too.
Okay.
Because, like, you talk about the first time that 3D graphics really got pushed the way that they did. I mean, granted, the game's 3D graphics are not exactly anything to go crazy about, but the cutscenes at the time were revolutionary at that time because you didn't get anything close to that level of, well, realism at the time. we were still back in the day thinking Daytona USA was going to be the most realistic graphics were going to be, and look where we've come since then. But yeah, you had the big budget because I remember, actually, you know what? Let me go Google what the budget was. I could have sworn it was like one of the first games to be like close to $1 or something, I think the budget was. But you have the budget. You had, okay, yeah, here it is. So yeah, back then it was between 40 and 50 or $45 million, which would be somewhere between around $70 million now. So at that time, it was a lot of money to be sinking into, especially back then, a Japanese RPG, but that was when it started really crossing over. And obviously, to American audiences, how many people talk about that game being the biggest one? Because that was the first time it really got heavily promoted here. Because, I mean, we knew about 2 and 3, which at the time we didn't realize was 4 and 6, and that's a whole other fucking story. But, I mean, we were starting to understand that Final Fantasy was a thing, and people that were on the niche end of Super Nintendo gamers knew of it. 7 was when everyone knew about it. And you knew about Cloud, you knew about Sephiroth, and everybody under the frickin' sun knows about Aerith dying in it, or Aerith dying, depending on which way you want to talk about that back in the day, which is also its own can of worms. But you got the big budget. Obviously, Square Soft at the time was a big studio in those days. Recognition was surreal. Like, there was a lot of marketing power behind that game. And again, Nobuo Uematsu was a massive name when it came to composition for doing most of the Final Fantasy games before that. So I think all of that encompassing it, unless you guys can maybe find something a little bit earlier than that, I would think the only possible chance would be a PC game. I don't think you could classify a Super Nintendo game in that, but we'll see. I guess we'll see. We'll see what the arguments say. But that to me is like the one that makes the most sense for me, being the earliest rendition of what's a AAA game today.
Okay. Chris, what do you have?
So my first one that I had thought of earlier, Adam, yours beats mine by 1 year, but very similar reasonings across the board. I was thinking the first Metal Gear Solid. And the reason I was going with Metal Gear Solid 1 is because it was the first time for me, and probably many others, where it felt like the game had finally kind of caught up to movies and such. Now, obviously, looking back, at no point does Metal Gear Solid 1 look like an actual movie, but it's where, it had full voice acting, it had cutscenes and a script that were reminiscent of some sort of, a movie at the time. Probably, I'm assuming, big budget, motion capture. Like, there was a lot of things going on, pushing the technology at the time for sure. But it was the first time, and again, I was trying to think of other instances, and I'm sure there are, where it actually felt like, a game was becoming closer to another genre like a movie, where it actually felt like, wow, this is above and beyond what games normally were, like looking again at like Super Nintendo, Adam, like you were talking about. But that came out in 1998, so that's obviously not before Final Fantasy VII. I quickly checked just to double check also, Adam, while you were talking, so it should be 1998. But yeah, that's the first one I'd come up with.
Yeah, Metal Gear was one of the ones I was looking at as well. Like it kind of hits that mark. You've got like, oh my goodness, what's the names escape me for a moment. Hideo Kojima, making it, so, like, big name there, and it even like released with like a premium collection, which had like a T-shirt and stuff. So like, it had some marketing to it, like really like technologically impressive as well. It was like yeah, recognized name production, did have marketing, large studio publisher, technologically impressive. The one that I had came out in 1996, and is Crash Bandicoot. Sorry, Jen's over there, and she loves Crash Bandicoot. I don't know if I picked it up. But hear me out for Crash Bandicoot. Technologically impressive in that it was one of the first 3D games that came out. Like, it was something that we were still experimenting with. The other thing that, for me, is that it was pretty popular in the sense that, like, a lot of people who had PlayStations had Crash Bandicoot. And the other thing is the marketing. I felt like the marketing was really well done. Like, I remember those commercials of, like, that guy in the Bandicoot costume going to Nintendo and just, like, chirping him with the megaphone. Like, There was a huge push for that.
Oh, didn't he yell like "booyah" all the time, like "booyah,
Yeah.
grandma" or something like
Yeah.
that? Yeah, I
I think
remember
he
those
did.
commercials.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's like, I don't think it's the strongest case, but I think like from a marketing perspective, technologically advanced, like I think Crash Bandicoot has.
Yeah, because
some
at least from the
possibility
budget perspective, like I just Googled it for reference, it's only 1.7 million. So like for
there.
that time, it definitely wasn't as high a budget.
Mhm. The other one that stood out, and this one that was the first one I initially jumped to, um, because these ones all kind of touch on them, but like I don't think they had like the marketing mainstream. Like Final Fantasy VII was probably the most like probably like the biggest like mainstream one. I think Metal Gear as well, but like in terms of like big when like it actually started getting big, like the one that I think of is a little bit later, and that's Halo 2. So Halo 2, technically, like Halo 1 was good. It was really neat. Like it had some interest, but I don't think Halo or even Bungie for that matter really had much of a name for themselves. And so, but I think when Halo 2 came out, like I remember that being huge in terms of how popular it was, the marketing, like hell, you still see people with like Halo 2 marketing posters and like that iconic dual wielding, Master Chief sort of thing. Like you still see posters of that. And like I don't know if it's necessarily the first, but it's one of the first ones I remember. Technologically impressive, large studio publisher, had like an amazing soundtrack in terms of like, the Gregorian chants and everything like that. Recognized, like I think that kind of checks all the boxes. The question is that one first?
Yeah, that's a good point because that's definitely a great example of like pure AAA, just like power right there.
Yeah.
Like that's like exactly what I think of when I think of AAA. That
Mhm.
the whole experience, the lineups at midnight to pick up the game, the
Mhm.
marketing, the world talking about it, where like you'd hear somebody's sister talking about Halo 2 and
Yeah.
she knew nothing of gaming and stuff. Like just, oh yeah.
And I feel like you saw people playing it too. Like you'd have TV shows where like, a bunch of guys were playing Halo 2 or something like that. Like I remember seeing that.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, this is a tough one.
Well, yeah, it's
This
definitely
is
challenging too, right? Because like you really have to sit down and wonder like what games would have been considered, big at the time. But the big part of it was like AAA wasn't really a thing that we used until the 90s. So
Mhm.
it's really hard to go like that deep because, again, because I'm even looking in say 96 to see what could pop up. I don't think Mario 64 I would classify as AAA because Nintendo
Nope.
isn't exactly like Nintendo is not. I don't even know if I consider Nintendo to be AAA even today because Nintendo is its own market.
The one I would put for AAA for Nintendo, if I was putting one on this category, is the original Super Smash Bros. Um, in the sense that it's not the strongest case, and I'm hesitant to put it on there. But if you think about it, like once again, that had a really strong marketing budget. Like you remember that commercial of them all walking through the field, like the mascots in the stupid over the top costumes, and they trip and kick and punch and kick each other, right? Um,
yeah.
well, like I don't think it was a super large studio that did it, but like it was a mainstream game. Technologically impressive? I don't know. Like I'd say maybe like it was a kind of a new genre, or not necessarily a new genre, but it was like it did some things and changed the genre a little bit.
Yeah,
Um,
because
I don't know
like
what the
it
genre
also depends
was.
on what we're comparing it to. Because if we're going by year, well, Final Fantasy and Metal Gear, I think have them beat because that's 99 for Smash Brothers.
Mhm.
Yeah, that was a bit later in
It's
the N64's lifespan.
but this is the question of the debate because we're looking like we do want to have what one was the first one, but we also need to figure out where that line was drawn because like maybe some of these games touch on it, but they don't quite hit that AAA mark.
Yeah,
So we have to
like I
figure
think
out when
that's where you get
which
into
one we put on top.
like you get like I said, Super Mario 64 if you want to be technical there.
Mhm.
I think also like Quake started out around that time, so that's something to look at.
Mhm.
Doom,
I'm looking through
Wolfenstein.
potentially like 95.
Yeah, but I don't think those would be considered like AAA games.
No,
Yeah, well, that's
no.
the thing, right?
Maybe.
Like again, like Mortal Kombat 3 is in 95, where it's really starting to hit its peak, but also like the budget's probably not that high. It was
You know
like,
what? Mortal Kombat's a good one though.
I was just
Because
thinking
like,
Mortal Kombat 2. Like I
because
like
no,
probably Mortal Kombat 1, but
but
yeah.
I don't think that it ever changed enough that you would consider it to be like, okay, this is pinnacle of like a big studio making it. it was just another Mortal Kombat game with like some slightly more more characters in it. So it's not like a big game changer, like say, again, like that change from Mario 3 to 64, or sorry, Mario World to Mario 64 was. So
But we're
that's
not
the
necessarily
challenge too, because like Mortal Kombat in a vacuum on its own is a big deal, but it wasn't a big budget at its time. It wasn't heavily marketed until after the controversy started. So that's also the challenge too. It's trying to like figure out, okay, but when it first released, would you consider it that? Whereas like I said with 7 before it was released was being shoved down everybody's throat as being the biggest thing in our history.
Yeah, I do remember people like, oh my god, it has like multiple discs and stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's tough because like even in a small way, like I wouldn't consider anything, especially on the NES, as AAA. But when you think back, and it's like pushing hardware as hard as it can go and everything like that, like you could almost make an argument for Super Mario Brothers 3. Because like if you take the marketing campaign, that was in movies. They did the Wizard movie specifically just to advertise basically Super Mario Brothers 3. And it was like the biggest launch at the time in gaming history. And gaming was being played by everybody, well, by kids, but still it was like huge at the time. But like you look at the hardware limitations of an NES and you're like, there's no way this is AAA. Everything's, just pixelated, whatever it is. So it's kind of, this is definitely a tough question, and it is an interesting debate because I'm sure there's somebody that would be listening to this right now and it's like, no, it is Super Mario Brothers 3. That's the one I was thinking. Like there's probably some people out there where it's like, you have to think of the hardware back then, not now. But me personally, I wouldn't, because it's like the hardware wasn't enough that it could have created AAA. That's kind of the way I see it for back then.
I just don't even think that it was like AAA wasn't like gaming as a whole wasn't big enough to even have a AAA.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's why even I'm hesitant to do things like Metal Gear and Final Fantasy, because I don't know if even PlayStation yet was big enough to have AAA at that point.
Yeah. It is
yeah,
tough.
I mean, if that's the conversation, then we start jumping into, I guess, like when we're starting to get into the Xbox PS2 era. But
and that's where I feel like
I do
AAA,
think
that's
that I do want to like put my flag down and think I'm pretty sure the PlayStation era was when we started looking at games like that.
Yeah, like
the invention of the disc.
Because I mean, obviously, like Resident Evil started really moving things. Shenmue is still to this day like one of the biggest budgets for its time. That was 99.
Maybe the first AAA never even came out until Knack. Maybe it was Knack on PS4.
All right, who brought Donkey into this chat?
I don't know. Like I think for me, it is around the Xbox PS2 era. That's when you start like seeing the larger budgets, the bigger, like people putting value and time into gaming. Like I think that's where that's when it starts getting some money ingested.
Well, and where do we also go into PC territory? Because if we go to 2000, we get into the Sims territory.
Yeah,
Sims is big. Sims is huge.
And also Diablo 2 is in that year. I'm just looking through like.
Oh, that was huge.
Because that's where we start getting into like the transition. Because PS2 will not be far behind from here. Yeah, you have that. You have Deus Ex also, where we were starting to see like PC gaming really starting to make a move in.
I wouldn't put Deus Ex as a
no, but like it's definitely
AAA.
where you see that guard starting to change. Because then once you get to 2001, that's when you get Metal Gear Solid 2. That's when you get into Final Fantasy X, Grand Theft Auto 3. Like I think 2002 is where you put like that is guaranteed where the line starts, where it was consistent. If we were saying when potentially the first game might have been, maybe it is 1997 with Final Fantasy, but I think maybe if we're looking at when did AAA gaming start to become more consistent, I think it's probably safe to say either 2000 or 2001.
Oh yeah,
yeah.
Especially with the PS2 era starting.
The first few years,
that might be really where it starts. Because Halo is also that year.
Yeah, but once again, I think Halo was revolutionary.
But I mean, like Xbox is now in the fray too, so now you're starting to get
100%.
those games in.
And for me, I
like,
think
in that year alone, like I said, Metal Gear Solid 2, GTA 3, Final Fantasy X, Devil May Cry starting, Sonic Adventure 2, Max Payne, Halo, Gran Turismo 3 is starting to hit its stride. Smash Melee, basically one of the biggest multiplayer games still going today.
Mhm.
And you're starting to see like where the jump to 3D is going everywhere. Because even games like you could not get away without seeing Crazy Taxi in every like place you went because every arcade had it.
Yeah.
Like it was starting to get that point where it's definitely starting to transition into, okay, now the big studio names are being plastered on the front of everything, and it's not just, because I mean we know too. You know how we know that AAA gaming was starting? Box art started being not as interesting.
Yeah, what the hell? AAA was when Mega Man on NES had those cool freaking box
Oh my
arts
God,
that
that's
made
terrible.
no sense.
As soon as we started
was
having the
AAA
silhouette
gaming.
shadows of people, that's when you know for sure the AAA gaming started.
See, for me, like I look at I think the 2000s is when AAA gaming started, and that's where companies were like, we need to start investing, and there's some serious money to be made here. And so I think, like you mentioned, things like Grand Theft Auto 3, Halo, Final, I think that's when they started paying attention. I think it's the sequels to those games that really took off. And so, like, I would say it'd probably be something like Grand Theft Auto Vice City, or Grand Theft, or like I said, Halo 2 would be one. Like those ones where like the properties were established, and then they sunk some money into them. Like they took the successful ones and sunk some money in.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's almost like they needed the technology to catch up,
Mhm.
and then obviously the popularity of gaming as a whole, or the just like how popular, yeah, I guess it was in general. Like where it was, 80s, obviously people looked at gaming like, oh, that's for kids. Like that's what the 80s was like. I mean, they probably weren't far off. 90s was getting a bit better, but by the time you finally hit 2000s, that's when people who were gaming, mostly as kids, were now in their 20s, and it was
Mhm.
actually still a thing they were doing. So yeah, it became a lot more mainstream. The technology caught up where it actually felt very impressive with all the things they were doing, even by today's standards.
Yeah, and definitely
Yeah.
by 2002 is when like you can say flat out that it's transitioned everywhere because PC gaming is now in full steam ahead because Morrowind's out now.
Oh yeah.
Neverwinter Nights is out. Hitman 2, Battlefield 1942. Like now we're at the point that everywhere like Nintendo's going full bore, PlayStation's kicking ass, Xbox is now starting its run, Dreamcast is unfortunately dying. And then obviously PC gaming is now really hitting its stride, and you're starting to see everybody shift off into their different directions, and you start seeing the changes. Xbox getting into, I guess, the more like gamer bro culture, PlayStation going deep into the Japanese part of AAA, Nintendo's just being Nintendo at that point, and then PC is going into the, massive adventure games and open world stuff, like where you start seeing the real expansive nature of what gaming can become. So I think that's, I think we can still make cases for the 90s having like the first initial AAA games, but I think the official consistent era of AAA starts in 2000, 2001 is probably our safe bet.
Yeah. And you can really see it too with it, because like the PS2 still is the greatest selling console of all time. The most amount of people had that system, and they didn't just make it about gaming. They made that also a DVD player, which at the time completely changed the game, right? And it was because you had not just kids using this device anymore. It was now the thing in the living room for playing games, AAA experiences, as well as watching all of your other content like DVDs,
It's gonna be
and playing
crazy when the
music on it
Switch
too.
finally tops that, because it seemed like it was a like the DS almost made it. The DS almost made it. It's just a million shy. Switch is, I don't know when this chart is from, but they're currently sitting at 122 with PlayStation 2 at 155. I think Switch will surpass that as in like the next 2 years.
That's bonkers.
And
That
it's
is
crazy because
still
we thought
bonkers.
like that looked like a number that was never going to be touched, which is crazy to think though because that's 2000. But again,
Yeah, like,
as you said, the DVD player made it more than just a game console at that time.
oh, 100%. Like I remember my dad even used the PS2 all the time. I had to teach him how to use it. I mean, it was very simple, but I still had to teach him because it was a controller. We didn't have like the media remote, and that just blew his mind with trying to control a DVD with a controller. But yeah, like it became much more accepted in basic society. Like it just, it had become that thing. Much like if someone was like, "Oh, I'm going to go see this movie," and it's like Jurassic Park, people aren't like, "Oh, that's weird. Like, why are you going to see that like niche thing?" And it's like, no, like everybody sees this. It is a AAA experience. It's for everybody. PS2 era 100% had hit that. So there's no denying that as soon as that released, like that is when AAA experiences were just the mainstay. They were just going to be consistent.
Yeah. It's a quick fun game. I told you guys the top 3. What's 4th and 5 or 4th and 5th? Kaylan, you get first guess. What's 4th?
Sorry, 4th and 5th for what? Sorry.
For all-time sales for consoles. 3 is Switch, 2 is DS, 1 is PS2. What do you think 4th is? You get first crack at it.
I'm gonna say PS4.
That is
no
incorrect,
PS5.
Chris.
Damn it.
And this includes handhelds, right? Because you said
Yes.
DS is on there. I guess I'll go with the Wii.
Incorrect. Kaylan.
Xbox 360.
Incorrect, Chris.
Game Boy Advance?
Incorrect, Kaylan.
I'm gonna say Game Boy Color. Or
There you
Game
go.
Boy.
That's 4th. All right, Chris, you get first crack at 5th.
I did not think that Game Boy. I guess Game Boy.
Oh, by the
Color,
way,
yeah,
that was at
around.
118 million.
Wow, that's not even that. Okay.
And 5th place has 117, so it's not far behind.
And when we were guessing before, if they were in 4th or 5th, you would have given
No,
us.
it was only for 4th.
Oh, okay. So then PS4. Now I'm.
Then
That's
yes,
my vote too.
Yeah, PS4
Okay.
is 5th.
So
And here's the thing that I thought was crazy. 6 is a long way behind 102. It's not the Wii, it's the original PlayStation. I would have
The Wii
sold
U.
my soul if the Wii would have done better than the PlayStation. I was very surprised to see that.
Yeah.
all those nursing homes that bought it.
Are they still buying
you
it? We gotta
think-
get that number up.
And all of those contributed to the Wii Sports being the highest selling game of all time. It's stupid.
Well, it came with every single. It came with
I
every
know.
single copy.
That's
of
why
the
I
Wii.
hate that when they're like the Wii Sports is the best selling game of all time. No, it's not. It wasn't sold separately.
I don't know. I can see an argument. Like you got to think of like how many people bought it. Like that's probably the most.
Yeah, but people weren't necessarily. Well, okay, most people actually were buying it for Wii Sports. So never mind.
Yeah, no
Never
one was.
mind.
No one was buying the Wii and saying what is and using Wii Sports as a coaster. Like everyone was playing Wii Sports. So I want to throw out here a contender, and I have a strong argument for this.
Oh, here we go.
I'm actually now on board for for Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Hear me out. 1, big budget game, right? The Grand Theft Auto is coming out hot after Grand Theft Auto 3, coming out from big studio. We got Rockstar North coming out with Vice City. Marketing and public view was huge. Like I remember seeing advertisements for Vice City. Like I see posters everywhere. It was huge. I recognized names in the studio. I was looking at the cast for Grand Theft Auto Vice
You'd
City.
be surprised you had the voice acting in there.
They got Danny Trejo in there, right? Like that's the first one that jumped out to me.
Isn't Ray Liotta
Mainstream.
in that?
Who?
In Vice City? Isn't Ray Liotta in Vice City?
Maybe. Let me see.
Yeah, he
was
is. He's
that
literally
one?
Tommy Vercetti.
Yeah. Yeah, Ray Liotta. Who's that?
Oh, Burt Reynolds.
Ray
I
Liotta?
forgot about Burt Reynolds.
Yeah, like big
Burt
names
Reynolds
in
is
there.
in it?
Yeah,
Burt
he's
Reynolds is in
Avery Carrington. He's the fucking mayor or whatever the guy is.
Holy crap.
Because he
What
literally
the
looks like
actual-
Burt Reynolds.
I
Yeah.
just had my mind blown. I did
Luis
not
Gu-
actually know it was him.
Luis Guzman is in there.
Oh yeah.
Gary Busey.
Yep.
Oh no. Oh my gosh. I have to
Lee
replay
Majors.
this.
Jenna Jameson is in that.
Yep.
Of
Yeah.
course she is.
So like big names are in there, right? Like you want to talk about people like we talk now
Fucking
about like
Ray
oh
Liotta.
right? So like we talk about now like where it's like hey big name is like we've got
Chris
Kevin
Pratt.
Spacey's face. Like no, but we talk about now where like they use like famous actors now. Like you got like Elliot Page or whatever in your game or something like that. Like this game has a ton of people that we recognize.
Remember the big deal
Technologically, it
was
was
when like Stephen Spielberg was being pushed to have a game,
Yeah.
and it was
Well, he
just
did.
like
He had
some
Medal of
shit
Honor.
puzzle game or something.
Oh, we had Medal of Honor.
Well, no, like there was literally one where they were pushing his name like down our throat, being like
Oh.
it's a Steven Spielberg created game, and it was like some puzzle game or something.
So
I don't
I'm
remember
continuing
that.
with my argument here. I don't think anyone would argue that Vice City was not mainstream
Oh
and
no.
technologically impressive at the time.
Yeah.
I submit to the jury Grand Theft Auto Vice City.
That is.
I found it.
What-
It was called Boom Blocks. I'm so glad that I Well, I'm not happy that I remembered that, but I'm also glad that my memory is not garbage enough that I remember stupid information like that.
What year did Vice City come out?
That was
Vice City
2002.
came out 2002.
Okay, yeah, that.
Like it came out quick after GTA 3.
So like
Yeah.
that's the thing. I can't think of anyone that like came out earlier that checks as many boxes as Vice City. Like Adam, I'm not trying to take away Final Fantasy VII. I think there's a strong argument, but I don't think it quite hit that AAA. Like it wasn't quite AAA yet. I think this is like that was probably the first prelude to AAA, but I don't think it hit.
I still think that like I can make a strong case that it's the first instance that we started looking at games like that. I don't
Agreed.
But like I said,
Yeah.
I think the 2000s is where you can put the flag down and be like, this is when it was a thing that everybody was aware of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It beats out Halo 2 by like a year, I think, or two. Yeah, I think Vice City has a strong case for it.
It's definitely one of the biggest games of all time in terms of like at its time when it was literally like one of the most recognizable things and most anticipated games when it was coming out.
Is there
I think we've got a
anything else
pretty
that-
solid list though. Like we've got a few things from like one generation and then the generation that really started it and kept it consistent. Because you got the generation before and the PlayStation generation, and now you got the PS2 generation, where I think that's where the tips really scaled, or scales were tipped. That's what I was trying to do, and everything started becoming more like that. I think like I said, we can find stuff in the '90s that began the process, but I think we can definitely say for sure that AAA was a well-known term and a well-known expectation in the early 2000s.
I was wondering why you guys didn't think it was Knack, and then I realized it's because before Knack, it was a game on the PS2, and it was Fantavision. I don't know if you guys remember that one. It's
No.
like the
How did you forget?
fireworks game that came out. I think it was a launch title for PS2.
I think
No?
y'all
Yeah.
are really you're really sleeping on Bubsy 3D.
Hey, it went from 2D to 3D. It pushed the technology at the time. Everybody knew Bubsy, right? Huge marketing with the Bubsy. I don't even know who made it. I couldn't even tell you the developer.
I don't think anybody needs to remember.
No.
Bubsy needs a
It might
crossover
have
with
been
Knack.
Accolade though. Now I gotta
LGN.
check this. Oh my god, if I'm actually right. Oh my god, it was Accolade.
See? You knew. Now you're pushing that it
if
actually
you sit
is
me down
Bubsy
in
3D.
Jeopardy, I might make $200. But god damn it, if there's a video game category, I'm cleaning the fucking house.
Yeah, like the only other ones that like are coming to mind is like I'm thinking like Medal of Honor because like we talked about it had Steven Spielberg attached to it, but like I don't think anyone recognized like it was published by EA.
It definitely
but
wasn't the same level, but
it
like
wasn't there yet.
it was like AA 0.5.
Exactly. Yeah.
Spielberg isn't enough also because he was attached to the ET game on Atari.
Was he really?
Yeah, there's pictures of him in the Atari
Yeah, technically
studio.
he would be like negative AAA because of how deep it was buried.
Yeah.
No, but the question is, was he involved or were they just like, hey, Mr. Spielberg, here's the game, and he's like,
No,
what
yeah,
the
he
hell is
wasn't.
this?
He wasn't involved like help making it. I mean, it was made by one person in like 2 weeks or something. But there is a picture of him coming in the studio, and I guess he's signing over the rights to make the game.
Yeah.
But it's still alarming just seeing someone like Spielberg signing for something that is known as like the worst game in
Yeah.
gaming history. It is alarming.
All right, fine.
Yeah.
The correct answer is Michael Jordan's Chaos in the Windy City. There we go. We've solved the problem. It's all
Shaq
done.
Fu.
But
Shaq
seriously,
Fu's in there too.
I think we got a pretty solid list.
Oh, we do.
Yeah. So I think that's a good one. I'm gonna make the argument for Grand Theft Auto Vice City. Adam, you're going with Final Fantasy VII. Chris, where do you fall?
Now I'm kind of torn because I liked my Metal Gear Solid answer, but the more that we've talked, it's kind of like I think like Final Fantasy VII, and then after that, Metal Gear Solid. It was kind of the start of AAA where it was starting to go. Not necessarily
it's
AAA,
like
but
step, and then here's the
Yeah.
elevator.
exactly. It's kind of like you get a Final Fantasy VII, then you get a Metal Gear Solid, and then all of a sudden you finally reached AAA.
Like basically when
Like,
you get to
full on.
PS2, like all of a sudden, boom.
Yeah, Fantavision comes out. Exactly. No,
So-
and then that's when I think you've kind of sold me on the Vice City. I'd have to look and see what other games came out like right before that to see if there was any that did hit. But I think you've got a very solid point on that's when we'd hit it. It was like, this is mainstream. Everybody's going to know it. This is AAA. We've made it now.
Yeah.
The stepping stones have led us to that moment, and we're finally there.
Yeah.
As a last joke, I'm gonna throw in Dead or Alive in the ring, except I had to realize I had to pull that rating back because it's really just double D as the rating.
Boo.
No, boo. I like that. That was good.
I'm actually curious, like those of you guys who are listening, if you are listening to this, let us know what you think would be the first AAA game. So like, if you're listening on YouTube, like throw it in the comments, or reach out to us on Twitter. Let us know what you think is our first AAA game. You can reach us at PixelPlay Podcast on Twitter. With that being said, let's talk about a game that is AAA, was AAA, and it remains AAA. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm bringing you guys an untimely review for Dead Space, the remake. As you know, we are not big enough to get games ahead of time, so we review them on our own dime and on our own time, bringing you untimely reviews. Like I said, Dead Space remake. Coming into this, I had never played Dead Space before. Obviously, I've heard of it. Just spooky games don't typically appeal to me. And right around the time that Dead Space came in, it wasn't something that was in my headspace. But this remake comes at the perfect time where it looks impressive. I have nothing to play, and I gave it a shot. And holy cow, what a game! I absolutely loved it. I thought it was really good. You would not think that this is a old game from like the aughts kind of feel. Like this feels like a PS5 game. There's a couple moments where it does kind of like there's like explosions and stuff, and sometimes it looks a little a little 2D or not 2D, a little dated, but for the most part it looks like a brand new game, runs like a brand new game. I had a great time with the gameplay. So you're going through basically an old or a abandoned ship that is dealing with like a zombie alien crisis situation. Very much gave vibes of like the old Alien movie. Absolutely loved it. It's spooky, but it's not like jump scares kind of boo kind of thing. It's more atmospheric. Really liked it. It took me about 12 hours to beat. It uses some old archaic components, like you can't save anywhere. You have to save at the save stations, which are pretty plentiful, so I didn't find it too troublesome or too much of an issue. Your typical fare where you've got weapons, but like only so much ammo per use. Having to make hard choices, like do you want to have a situation where you have no oxygen in the hallways or no lights, and like you can choose which one you want. It was honestly, the gameplay is really fun, really interesting. Story is really captivating. You want to figure out what happened to this the ship, how to get off, what the solution is. Really cool that way. The story gripped me for a bit. After a while, you lose what the mystery is, and it becomes a little bit of a slogfest. Not a huge variety in terms of characters, but I was constantly curious to see what happened next in the story. Performance-wise, like I said, it runs great. It doesn't have all the features of like a PS5 game. I don't think it had HDR. At least I can't remember if it did. Regardless, looks fantastic. Like the atmosphere is great. The sound's great. Only issue I had with the game is there was one instance of like a game breaking bug, and not even like completely game breaking, but they've added side quests that kind of explain some background information on the story. And as I was playing it, one of the situations was that I went to do something and I must have loaded at the wrong time, or it was like a wonky little area in the game. I'd like loaded it up, and I just did too much, and it didn't recognize that I'd picked up something I was supposed to. And so it kind of wasn't able to allow me to complete the quest and then continue. Because it was a side quest, I just moved on, assuming I had done what I needed to do. And yeah, because that item was not registered as being picked up, I couldn't continue that side mission. Did it break the game and make it unplayable? No, but I feel like I missed out a part of that game. But it was a weird sort of situation in that aspect, but it did happen to me. Yeah, I thought it was really good. Towards the end, it gets a little bit I kind of lost a little bit of that interest, but it kept me on the edge of my seat, and I wanted to see what happened next continually. So yeah, I would definitely recommend Dead Space if you've played it before, if you've never played it before, or you want to play it again. Great option to go with. So fully recommend it. I would give this I'd give this 6 out of 6. There's really nothing wrong with this game that would hesitate me to like. I mean, if you're not into spooky games, this is not going to be a game for you. But if this game, from a theme, from a story, from a gameplay, appeals to you, I have no reason or hesitation to say why it wouldn't be appealing to you. So yeah, Dead Space remake, 6 out of 6.
So
Yeah, Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
you asked your serious question because my only question is a joke question.
Oh, I didn't really have a question. It's more, I'm actually quite interested in playing this. I'm not good with spooky games.
Yeah.
Resident
As someone
Evil.
who is neither, it's not that bad.
Yeah, and the thing is like this has always kind of interested me. I have the original on PC. I got it in a humble bundle like so long ago. But the thing is the remake itself obviously improves on that so much and like would make it even more appealing to give it an actual go, to give it an actual try. But yeah, like if you're saying that the it's a spooky game, but not in the sense of like jump scares and stuff like that. It's more just atmospheric. And oddly enough, one of my favorite movies of all time is the original Alien movie, which as soon as you kind of mentioned that, it kind of sold me on it. Now, I would never play Alien Isolation. That just stresses the hell out of me.
That is designed to scare the shit out of you.
Yeah, this actually seems. I mean, I really actually want to give this a go. I don't know if I'd pick it up.
It's a good bridging of like
right away.
Of it still has a decent like action game, but it's also got like those elements. And again, it's not scary so much as it will startle you, but it's not something you're gonna be having like fucking nightmares about. It's not like like the first person Resident Evils where there's the friggin' like baby in Village where it's just like nope.
Yeah, so I would say like it's it's tense in the sense of like you don't know, like you have situations where like enemies come from behind you, but like they're not popping out of nowhere. Like you start noticing where like the spawn points are for them. So like you kind of like look at the walls, you look at the ceiling, you look at like, are they coming? Like you kind of know where to expect them from, and they certainly at times will like sneak up behind you, but it's tense and scary as like where are they? And like I don't have a lot of ammo. That being said, I was playing the game on medium difficulty for the most part. There was like 1 or 2 segments where I had to like drop the difficulty, but for the most part I played it on medium, and there are still easy and story mode. So if you want to have this be more of an adventure game or a little bit more of a power fantasy, I think that would be something that is attainable. So yeah, don't feel like this is a game that is meant to make you feel on edge, a little bit nervous, but it doesn't have that scary factor.
Yeah, I think this is one I'm definitely going to pick up. I don't know if I'll grab it right away just because I have some other things on the go and Star Wars is coming out soon. But I could see myself grabbing this probably in the summer, like maybe during a PlayStation summer sale, or maybe it would come to Game Pass at some point, but I don't think I'll hold my breath on that one for a while.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think this is one I'll pick up when it's on sale.
Cool.
All right, so my joke question. Because it's not much of a spoiler anymore, because it's obviously the game has been around long enough. How was your experience with the boss that I can only describe as being a giant space sphincter?
Yeah, there's a couple of those. So it was fine. Like I said, I like the game. Like,
and the follow-up is, do you know about the foam finger?
No.
Okay, here's your homework. You'll never do this because you have to beat the game on impossible to unlock it. But there is a weapon that they did put in the remake called the foam finger, and it is the most funny thing ever because it's literally just a giant red foam finger like you would see at a sports event, and every time the weapon fires, it's literally just Isaac going bang. So if you shoot it, it's bang, 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 and it's extremely OP.
Awesome. That's awesome.
And it's OP. That's the best.
It's extremely OP.
That's awesome.
Do you even see like bullets or anything? Or
I don't even know if you see bullets, but it's just everything dies.
That's awesome.
Bang, bang, bang.
Cool. So, Chris, Adam, you also have a Untitled review for us. Final Fantasy 12, I think.
Absolutely.
Take it away, sir.
So I actually lied. I have 2 reviews because I finished Untitled Goose Game in the time that I downloaded before the show today. So I will quickly go over Untitled Goose Game because there's not exactly that much to talk about. But I mean, what can I say about it? It's a game about being a goose and stirring shit, and it does exactly what that is. Because I mean, it's just a really charming like little game where you just have like you have like 5 different set levels, and all you're doing is you have a notepad that just says, oh, get this or make this person do X. And you basically have just a couple commands. You run, you lower your head, you grab shit, and you honk. And you honk a lot because of course you do. You're a goose. Why wouldn't you honk? And it took me like, I don't know, like hour and a half, 2 hours to get through all the levels. It's not much. It's 5 really quick levels. You can finish each level in like 20 minutes. It doesn't take much. Especially once you've gotten past the first level and you understand what you got to do. It gets a lot easier to understand what you do to get around things. It's just super charming. You can't get around the fact that just being an annoying little shit to every person around you is not enjoyable. Just going around stealing food, going around just taking water, just yelling at people, making them fall on stuff. How could you hate on that? Now, in terms of a rating, I don't know. It's like a solid 4. Like, I'm not going to sit here and say it's a game-changing game. But I mean, it's a fun little thing to pop in for a couple hours, stir some shit, and then leave. What's so bad about that? Especially when it's free, because that's what it was on Extra. Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah, it's super fun. I played this when I first got my Xbox. This was one of the first games I played because it was on Game Pass at the time. And I actually was going through and trying to get some of the achievements, and they had some extra ones, I think, in there where it was like, oh, have a picnic. You have no idea what the hell it's talking about, but it's like in this level here you're seeing on the screen. For anyone not seeing it, it's a farmer's or not even a farmer, like a guy just growing vegetables in his garden, I guess. And you have to like get a whole bunch of food and pull it out of the area, and there's like a little picnic blanket somewhere down by the lake. You have to drag all the food down there and just drop it on the blanket just to create a random picnic. Like it purely is the most random game ever.
Yeah, like
but,
there's like fun quests
fun.
where you'll steal a kid's toy and you throw it onto a table at a shopping area to the point that like when the kid goes to grab his toy, the shop owner gets pissed because they think it's part of the shop decor and makes him pay for it, and that's a quest.
Yeah.
So it's like it's
Awesome.
little things like that. But yeah, it's just a little charming game, and if it's something that if you don't have like Extra or Game Pass and you can't play it there, I mean, you find it on Steam for like $5 at any time, and it's more than worth the price of admission there. But that wasn't the actual review. I just happened to finish a game literally like just before we started the show, so at least I had something extra to throw in there that, you know, I'd throw something off. But I have an actual like super untimely review. Now it's made somewhat, you know, doable again today because obviously when Final Fantasy 12 was re-released for the PlayStation 4 and Switch and stuff with the Zodiac Age, obviously you can come back to it. But I never beat the game when it originally came out on PS2. I just, for whatever reason, I've tried, I want to say like 3 separate times to do it, and it never would click. Like the story was never really there for me growing up, so it never had my attention. It took a while to really get going. And then, you know, this time around, I was like, you know what? I need a game to play and just kill some time. Why don't we take one more crack at it? I'm a little older now. I might actually understand some of the stuff. I might actually pay attention to things. And hey, I can if things are boring or I need to grind a little bit, that's a pretty easy setup to throw on a podcast and just go level up for a bit. And that's what I did. And in all honesty, like, I'm surprised that I didn't finish it the first time when I first had it, because it's really, really good. I think the only problem is there's so much to do that by the time that you finish side questing, you kind of forget the story. And I think that's probably why I stopped, because I went, what was I doing again? And just kind of gave up, or something shiny came around, because, you know, being a teenager, shiny things are pretty common at that point. It's easy to get distracted by anything. But now that I've had a chance to go through it properly, and, you know, nothing's really gotten in the way, I appreciate it a lot more than I did growing up, because I don't think I would have top 10'd it, you know, back in the day, taking everything that I know. I'm not sure if I still do it now. If it does, it would be very low in the top 10, like 10 or 9 at most. But it's definitely a lot better than I remember it. And I think just the overall vibes of it are kind of what I like the best about it. It's sort of like, I guess, fantasy meets steampunkish sort of deal, because you have like the airships and the weird like steel like floating contraptions that, you know, people are flying around, like all the gunships and things like that. So there is still like that mixture of it where it's not too far in the fantasy direction, but it's also not too far in like where we got into like, even though 7 I've come to like a little bit more now, but like 13 I just never vibed with that world at all very much. 13 too, when it came out, kind of re-tipped the scales back to balance it a bit because it tended to be a little more fantasy, at least in my opinion, when 13.2 came out. This one is just strictly all fantasy world, apart from like airships and the odd gun here and there. But like the worlds themselves are all like deserts, like super like massive puzzle ridden dungeons, magic everywhere, like all of that's still there and has that old vibe to it. And the characters themselves aren't like over the top, like apart from I guess Balthier, who is just a motherfucking boss. But everybody else is like they play the roles very well. They're all like, it's the princess, it's you know, the guard who is now, you know, lost his honor and is trying to reclaim it. You have the 2 orphan kids that are just trying to find their place in the world. Like I said, you have the bounty hunter who's, you know, just he's basically Han Solo in a Final Fantasy game. There's not really much else to it. There's a Star Wars comparison made a lot with this game. I don't think that holds any water once you've played more than like 5 hours of it, because as soon as you get past like freeing the princess and you have like that like sort of moment of like it feels like you're freeing Leia from jail, it stops being like Star Wars. So I don't know where that comparison continues from. I guess other than the fact that you're fighting the Empire, I guess like that's about as far as it goes. But it's not like there's not really a race of Jawas. There isn't a Chewbacca unless you count Thrawn. But let's be honest, Chewbacca doesn't have nearly that nice an ass. But I mean, I definitely like the game a lot more. You know, the story I appreciate a little bit more now because obviously being older, you can appreciate more things that are about struggle and dealing with things like poverty and kingdoms that are being currently like overrun with a dictatorship and things like that. Like as a teenager, I didn't give a shit. I was just like, ooh, that's pretty. And that's about as far as my brain went. Can I go kick the crap out of some giant monsters? And what I do like too is that it's probably the last Final Fantasy game that we get to where I like the combat system, because it feels more like I'm playing 14, because it's very much an MMO system. It's, you know, you point it where you want and you activate abilities as you need be. There are even what they call gambits in this game, where it's almost like you have a script written. They give you up to 12 slots and you can say, okay, if this person's HP goes below 50%, use this spell on them. Or hey, after the battle's done, like you have them prioritized too. So you just like, normally what I would do is I would have, okay, attack, and then a bunch of things over top if I needed those to be done ASAP. And then when the battle's done, I'd have a few underneath. So like my white mage would be, okay, you're at like 9 or 10, your attack. 8 to 1 is like heal, like raise the dead, status effects. And then underneath that is like, okay, when the battle's done, put protect back on them, put regen back on them, or put bravery on them, like stuff like that. So that way they're ready for the next fight. So it does a good job of like being an MMO without actually being an MMO, because it's completely single player. And it has all of the customizability in terms of your gambits, the license board, which is how you gain abilities or unlock the ability to use weapons or spells, or just adding on to your HP or your attacks. Because leveling up does raise your stats slightly, but a large part of what you do is based on that license board, which is just essentially, you know, you get, say, 10 ability points. Okay, well, this ability costs 10 points, but this one costs 20. Do you want to do this 10 that you might not necessarily need, but this one at 20 you really want, so you might want to save up? So it gives you a bit of that applicability. And Zodiac Age also helped out because it added the ability to do 2 license boards, so you could have a little more customizability, so you could really make some more like good crazy builds instead of it just being, okay, you're the healer, okay, you're my black mage, okay, you're my warrior. Now it's, you're my warrior, but you can also do status effects when I need you to. You're my white mage, but you can also use guns, and guns don't require any use of the strength stat. So because your strength stat is so bad, it doesn't matter. So you actually have a use now to attack that isn't just, you know, bonking people on the head with a staff. You're actually useful now. Or my warrior, he did time magic, so he could keep himself going really fast. So his strong attacks were being hit harder and harder and much faster. So there's a lot of applicability to it that I thought was really fun to use and really good to strategically do. And then, like I said, there's so much to do in this game. They have so many hunts where these massive monsters that you try to fight. Some of them require certain like requirements. So some of them you have to like kill every monster on the map first before they'll even appear. There's one that you literally have to just wait 5 minutes for until it pops up. There's one where you have to be in critical HP status before it shows up. So you're almost like about to die before the battle even starts. And they all have their challenges here and there depending on how much you've grinded. Some of them are really heavy on status effects, which really involves those gambits that if you've strategically laid out, you're able to cover. Otherwise, you start getting really overwhelmed. But it does a great job of, I don't feel like they were ever unfair. It's you were underprepared or you didn't set up properly. I never felt a sense of, oh, it's bullshit, this guy's got too much HP. The only thing I would say that I don't like about this game is that a lot of bosses towards the end of the game have this thing where, oh, I put a shield up, you can't do physical attacks for 2 minutes. And I go, so I'm just sitting here. Now, thankfully, as Chris said with a lot of JRPGs these days, there's a fast forward button. You can reduce that time, so it's not nearly as bad. But for the most part, every fight just seemed like, okay, I have to make sure that I'm prepared for this. This boss will do this. This boss might do this. This boss can do this. I need to be ready for all of these things to happen. And instead of it being like when the old games where you picked exactly what you wanted to do, now it feels more like I'm a strategist on the back of the field, getting everybody ready to fight, whereas in the older games you were picking specifically what you wanted done. Now I feel like I'm in the back barking orders, and it was a nice balance there. And the story as a whole, it's okay. Like, it has its bits here and there that are really interesting. I think just the world itself is more interesting than the actual story it tells, because the world of Ivalice is an incredible world to the point that it's been used several times. Because I mean, it's been in Tactics, I don't know. I don't think 11 is 11 referencing Ivalice or no? Do you remember, Chris?
If they do, I don't think it's the main world. There may be like a part where you go there for a little bit because I think they may even have done that.
But it's definitely Tactics that does for sure.
Oh yeah, Tactics.
So
is
like,
all
it's a world that's been used more than once, and it's a really cool world because the races are all really neat and diverse. All of the different areas, like not everything is just a simple set of like with 7. Granted, 7 has eventually other areas, but they're mostly just town at beach, town at grassland, whereas this is definitely a much more diverse set of areas where like there's a floating city, there's a town deep in the desert, there's a massive city with its own underworld, there's all these different dungeons that are like super trap ridden, like underground magic ridden bunker like level stuff. It's crazy the different things that happen here. So overall, I appreciate the game a lot more. I think there's a lot more to like about this than, when I was younger, where it was just, I guess, the spectacle of it. Now I feel like I like a lot more. My only gripes really is that I still feel like there's too much. And then I feel like the story could have done a little bit more because the villain isn't exactly the most robust villain. He's more like, I'm the leader of the evil area, so you must hate me. And I go, okay, sure. I'll do that. But like, I didn't feel like Vayne is definitely not even in the top 20 of Final Fantasy villains. He's not even close. Like, there's just nothing memorable about him. I think those are my two biggest gripes. Just there being so much content and then just the villains not being nearly as interesting. So if I was to rate it, I'd probably give it about a 4.5. It's a solid game to go back to now, and Zodiac Age being the remastering for PlayStation 4, I think is a great way to experience now. I would not play the PS2 version. Definitely not play the PS2 version. A, because it doesn't run nearly as well, and B, because they made a lot of changes to really open the game up a little bit more. I think they've definitely done some nice stuff to add on to it. Also, that fast forward feature, goddamn.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that fast forward feature. I was gonna ask you about it, but you already touched on it. When I replayed this, it was a game changer. As anybody watching the video can see when it's all sped up. The maps are huge sometimes, and it's all on foot. And
if you want to overgrind, like, you need that. Like, you put 4 times speed on it, and there's one area specifically that I've spent like 2 hours in, because there are some bosses where you do need to be super overgrinded. So it is what it is, but like, those are optional. Like, if you want to do, like, I walked into the final boss and poked him to death. I should not have walked into the final boss as high leveled as I was. I was probably 20 levels too high. But that's a JRPG. You do all of these things just to walk in and go to the boss being like, "Hi, asshole who's been torturing me for the last 20 hours." Yoink, and scene.
In your defense, getting stabbed by a sword usually does end most people, so
Yeah, it's
it's
the one
actually
time where it
very
almost feels
realistic.
realistic, doesn't it? It's like, wait, didn't I just hit you with a sword like 50 times? Why aren't you dead? You have no armor on.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thanks for the review, Adam. And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for checking us out. If you liked what you hear and you want to hear more, we have more podcasts wherever you get your podcast by searching for PixelPlay Podcast. If you want to see our lovely faces while we do this show, you can find us on YouTube or Spotify, searching for PixelPlay Podcast. And we also have a bunch of socials. We'd love for you to reach out and connect with us. Let us know what game you think is the first AAA game, if we convinced you on one of them, or if there was one that we forgot about. You can reach out on Twitter or Instagram through PixelPlay Podcast, or through our link tree, linktr.ee/PixelPlay Podcast. With that being said, I've been your host, Kaylan, aka Catastrophe, joined as always by Adam at CS Radical and Chris at Jin and Chris. Thank you so much, and have yourselves a great evening. Bye for now.